On this episode, I chat with Dirk from Cinema Blend to learn more about the Galactic Starcruiser's Media Day event. Today is March 4th, 2022, and this is episode 440 of the Main Street Magic Podcast.
Jeremy and Rhonda are more than a little fond of Disney World, so they made this podcast to share it all with you. Reports and resorts, top 10 lists of all sorts, Main Street Magic's bringing it home for you.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Main Street Magic. I am your host, Jeremy Stein, and while I am not joined by Rhonda today for this episode, I will be soon joined by a special guest to talk about the Galactic Starcruiser. But first, make sure you check us out on the web at mainstmagic.com, as well as follow on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at mainstmagic. If you've not done so already, head out to Facebook and search for the Main Street Magic community and ask to join. And then if you hit that subscribe button, you'll get brand new episodes every Tuesday and Friday. And if you want to help support laid off cast members by ordering groceries through an amazing small business, then Vacation Grocery Delivery is for you. In fact, they're so awesome, they signed on as our platinum sponsor for the Main Street 16 Challenge, which benefits Give Kids the World. You can visit msmfriends.com to book your next grocery order for your vacation, or visit mainstreet16.com if you want to learn more about our weekend scavenger hunt and ride challenge coming up this April. Let's go ahead and just hop into today's episode with our guest, Dirk from Cinema Blend. Well, Dirk, thank you so much for taking some time to join me today and talk all about the Galactic Starcruiser. I know our listeners are very excited to hear all about it. So welcome to Main Street Magic Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate your time.
So let's just kind of dive right in. When you show up, is your story beginning that you're literally in Walt Disney World about to travel to another place, or how does that start?
My experience was not the full 2-day trip experience that some folks got. There were apparently 2 tiers of media invite as far as that goes.
Yes.
That I will not make comments about. But I was in a group where they kind of gave us the expedited version. I was there for a few hours, kind of doing the highlights. So I did not do the full get in the shuttle to go from wherever to the Starcruiser. I basically just pulled up in a car to the Starcruiser. From there, there is kind of a check-in process, although they moved us through that fairly quickly. You walk down a gray hallway that looks like you're on a detention block somewhere, where you get essentially a safety video on a big screen before you get into the shuttle that flies you up to the ship, which is the elevator that goes up to the actual ship. And that part is pretty cool. I mean, basically from that point, you are on board. And so it's an elevator, but it's got a couple of, window screens that show an exterior environment and then transition into space as you are firing up to dock with the Starcruiser.
Gotcha. How is once you get up into the Starcruiser area and all, I guess talk a lot about, the theming of everything, because I'm seeing out on social 2 very different thoughts, as I know you are as well. And everybody is, where, especially from old school Star Wars fans who I think are disappointed that it doesn't look battered and used, that everything looks brand new and shiny. You head over to Galaxy's Edge and Batuu. I think we have a lot more of that. Yes, this has been here a while. What did you think of the theming overall, and what are your thoughts on it kind of looking like this literally is a brand new ship? I
don't know. I'm torn on it. On the one hand, I agree. That's always been one of the thing about Star Wars that makes Star Wars to me is that sort of bizarre combination of the futuristic and the old and decayed, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about technology that is light years ahead of what we are dealing with. In reality, at the same time, it's all looking old and broken.
Right.
It's a very strange dichotomy. That is what makes Star Wars to me. And the Starcruiser certainly is not that. Everything is very bright and shiny for the most part. I mean, I walked into I got to see the engine room section, and that's definitely not done up to look bright and shiny because it's not, in story, it's not meant to be a thing that people see.
Gotcha.
And so that part, I think, kind of works a little better, giving you that more traditional Star Wars feel, but I never felt it never felt wrong to me. It never felt like it wasn't Star Wars.
Okay.
Even though it is sort of different in that regard. I mean, but the theming, because at the end of the day, it is a cruise ship. It is a luxury. It's in story. It's a luxury experience.
Yeah.
While there is an element of me as a fan that would be like, oh yeah, it would be cool to be in a more traditional Star Wars thing. At the same time, if I'm spending that kind of money, I probably want the nice experience. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah. That actually leads me to my next question about, I guess, kind of the size and scope of the ship. Did you get to see most of the ship? How is it broken down? Does it feel like a cruise ship, or does it feel like a hotel with no windows?
I mean, I would say it feels more like a cruise ship. I never felt claustrophobic.
Okay.
I mean, there are, because there are windows in that, there are screens showing the space outside. And I don't know how much that necessarily changed the way I felt, having not been able to experience the opposite. But most of the rooms are, the atrium is a big open space. The dining room is a big open space. So it never really feels small. I mean, going down, say, the hallway, one of the hallways where all the cabins are is maybe a little bit smaller, a little bit tighter, but I think that kind of goes in with the story as well. It never felt like it was kind of closing in on me.
Yeah.
It never struck me that I wasn't looking at windows, honestly, while I was there.
Well, then, I mean, it sounds like they did their job then.
I think so. I think it works. I think it works well. You're so focused on, I think the idea is that you're so focused on what you're doing while you're there that you're just not noticing that.
Yeah. Did you get to participate in some of the story, or did they tell you kind of how the story progresses and some of the activities and things that go along with it?
Yeah, the main stuff that I did was sort of were a few of the sort of story element objects. So like I did the lightsaber training, and I got to do the pilot, the piloting of the ship element. I got to do that a couple different ways. And so I got to see and got to be like in the atrium when major events were happening around me. The people from Disney that I was with would kind of walk us through, like, okay, so this part is something that you might experience on day one, and then later, okay, now we're jumping into day two. This is going to be something that might happen later on in the story. At the same time, there were other things that I know I didn't see. I mean, I think they kind of took us down what one path of story might be, but there are others. And depending on what you do, there are going to be parts of the ship that you don't see.
Okay.
One of the things that a lot of people are looking at this as and saying, oh, well, maybe I'll do this once. It's really expensive. It's a lot of money, but I'm a big Star Wars fan. I could probably save up and do this once. The biggest problem with that is that once isn't going to be enough. Like if you do it and you love it, you're going to want to come back because there's going to be other stuff that you don't see and you don't do.
Interesting. Now, how was the lightsaber experience and the things that you did get to do?
Overall, they were fun. They were smaller, kind of what I would call like a smaller experience. Piloting the ship is very much like, say, Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run.
Okay.
In structure. I mean, there's a few different things that you can do, different stations you can stand at and do different things. But it is very much like it's a big screen with space, and you're shooting at asteroids, or you're kind of doing the engineer thing and hitting buttons to fix the damage on the ship or whatever. It's sort of Smuggler's Run writ large.
Yeah. And
it's, at the same time, it's like, it's a big, massive space. So the room's not like shaking the way the Falcon would be. You're trading off kind of the larger scale of it for some of the more attraction-based ideas. So it's like, I'm not sure that by itself, if that was Smuggler's Run, people probably wouldn't be that thrilled with it. For what it is, it's fine, it's good, it's fun, and it's just one piece of a larger thing you're doing. So it's not like, if like lightsaber training was kind of fun, but it's probably the one thing that I could skip if I went back.
Okay.
It's cool to do once. I think everybody who's there should do it once. It's pretty simple, and it's not necessarily something that I feel like, oh, I want to do that again. Whereas some of the other stuff I would.
Are now stuff like that, the lightsaber experience, the piloting the ship, are those built into the stories while you're there that everybody would do, or is it more like an excursion you would book like you would with a real cruise?
It depends. I don't know everything about like all the stories, so I'm honestly not sure. My impression is that lightsaber training is something that kind of everybody would do. I ended up doing the piloting thing twice in two different story elements. My impression is that it might be something everybody does once.
Yeah.
And then you may end up going back depending on what path you end up following. But I'm not even sure of that.
Did you get to try some food and beverage while you were there?
I did.
How was that?
I basically got the meal that is the first night's dinner, which is in both cases it's kind of a set menu. Everybody's going to get the same thing. They can deal with like dietary restrictions. So
Sure.
if you can order a special version of the menu, you can get it. But yeah, I got to do the first night's menu, which I thought was quite delicious. They're all sort of, it's a variety of small portions of different things. The second night's menu, I think actually is the one I wish I'd gotten, just from looking at pictures and reading about it.
Yeah.
That one is more of a sort of tastes around the galaxy, and you get different dishes that are supposed to be from different planets, and they've turned the shrimp blue and other cool stuff. I'm a huge theme park foodie. Like, food is my thing. Like, when I'm in the parks, that's what I spend money on, is like, what's the new tasty thing I haven't tried yet. So and it was good. I really enjoyed it, and would definitely like to eat some more.
That's good to hear, especially seeing all the photos, because Disney, what I've said a lot of times, and I think they're getting better about it, but Disney in general, especially with different treats and desserts that would come out in the parks, is that it seemed like so much focus was on, does this look good on Instagram, and how many people are going to take photos of it? But a lot of times the taste wasn't backing it up. And I think they're getting better with some of that, but I'm just glad to hear that the food that they are presenting here does look like it's from another world, but does taste really, really good. I think it's sometimes hard to accomplish both of those things. So that's really good to hear.
Yeah. And I talked to one of the people on the culinary side while I was there about exactly that balance and how like difficult that is, because on the one hand, if you make it too wild, then it's potentially going to turn people off. They're not gonna, if the taste is too bizarre or the look is too off, unusual from what people are used to, they're not going to be willing to try it. And so it's got to be comfortable enough that people want to eat it, but you also do, because it is Star Wars, you want it to look like it's Star Wars. And so like the blue shrimp was the example that the guy was giving me. It was like, we wanted to make it look different, but it had to taste the same. The blue shrimp is just shrimp cocktail.
Right.
If you eat it, as he told me, you eat it with your eyes closed, you're just going to taste shrimp cocktail. It looks very different. And finding that balance was tough. Like, they would, if they ended up going too crazy with a design of a dish, it'd be like, we have to pull this back because it's just not going to work. I mean, we saw that with Galaxy's Edge with stuff where it's like, they, just the names of it, they had to kind of pull back on like the theming of it, because people were, people felt strange ordering tip yip or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think they first experienced that back when Skipper Canteen opened. If you remember, that menu looked and sounded a lot more adventurous than it technically is now, but they didn't really change the food much. It really came down to what things were called, and so I find that part really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to see the cabins, the rooms.
Yeah.
How are those in size? Because the photos seem very deceiving from what people are now saying, that they're actually very spacious and there's a lot of room.
I'm not a big person personally, so they were totally fine with me. What I would say is like the rooms overall are not huge.
Okay.
The standard room. Especially if we're talking about like families going or large groups and getting like one cabin, if you put 3 or 4 people in one of those rooms, it's going to get a little tight.
Yeah.
Having said that, like the parts that are bigger than they appeared in the images are like the bunk beds are a pretty good size. So like even a decent sized person is going to, it's going to be able to fit in there, I think, pretty comfortably.
Okay.
When it comes to actually sleeping. But it's like, but if you have 4 people in there who are all like brushing teeth and taking showers and getting ready for bed or getting up in the morning, like it's going to be a little tight. I'm not going to lie to you there. It was the rooms are not huge, but they are nice. I didn't sleep in the bed, but it seemed I kind of laid down, tested it out. It seemed pretty comfortable. So I mean, the other thing is they're very well lit. The whole place is very well lit. It's very bright. It's very welcoming, which I think that's the other thing is the lighting is pretty good and it makes the room feel bigger than it actually is. There will be times when I think it will be tight for folks, but I mean, again, I think part of the idea is you're not going to spend a lot of time in the room.
Right. Yeah. Well, if we're talking about people going through these stories and all of this stuff, yeah, it seems like there won't be a lot for that. The big question of everybody's is it worth it? And I know you didn't do the full experience, but talk, I guess, a little bit about your thought. And the conversation I keep having with people is it's expensive. If I want to go with my family of 4, it's going to be $6,000. I'm not in a position to spend $6,000. So it's really not fair for me to judge and say, is it worth it or not? I need to think of it from the angle of if I did have $6,000 to spend on this, is it then worth it? Because you know what I mean? Somebody who's never going to go on it, I don't know if they can technically say whether it appears to be worth it or not. What are your overall thoughts on that? Especially when it comes down to the possibility of, like you said, of you could spend $6,000 and go on this thing and miss stuff or not see everything. Or I know I saw one person that did the full stay said he had to go back to his room to go to the bathroom and missed a major plot point in the story that was a surprise because he was back in his room. And so I think that's a lot more where the conversation may lead of, is it worth it? Yeah.
And it is. I mean, it's tough to say. My personal feeling right now, having experienced parts of it, I want to go back. Okay. I want to book the trip and do the whole thing because what I did do I thought was really cool, and I would like to have that, that full experience. At the same time, like I saw the same thing, I think, from the guy who was like, he missed something when he was in the bathroom. Yep. And that's wild to me that would like, that feels like a problem.
Yes.
I'm in a position where right now, like I have 2 kids, one is 5 or almost 5, and one is 2 months old. So I'm not going anytime soon because I'm not taking a 2-month-old to Galactic Starcruiser. Yeah. Maybe if in a year or 2 when I can either let her stay with grandparents for a couple of days or wait a few years and take both kids or whatever, I would definitely be interested. My general inclination right now is to wait a little while, not just because of my situation, but there are going to be like wrinkles in this whole thing that need to be worked out. Yeah. Like, as we speak, the place is full for probably the first time ever. Yeah. They've done a bunch of media events and other test flights. I talked to folks, people at Disney and Lucasfilm who had done, test stays in the thing. I'm guessing it was not 300 people's worth of people when they did that.
Right.
So right now the thing is full for the first time ever. Stuff's going to break. Stuff's not going to work. Like there's no, as cool as I think it all is, as much work as I think went into it, as impressed as I am, there is just no way that everything is going to go perfectly the first time.
Yeah.
They will discover things that just don't work the way they thought they would once it all happens. Then they will work to fix those things. I feel like it's worth it enough that I would like to try it. Having said that, I will probably wait a little while so that they can kind of figure out where the problems are, polish up, fix things where they need to be fixed. And then in, a few months or a year, I think it'll probably be be a pretty well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
And that's when I would, because certainly if I'm going to spend that money, I want to make sure that it's all going to work out.
Yeah. I think you raise a really good point there. And, I'm so interested to, have seen everything last week with the different media events, to see this, next week or two as they welcome the first paying guests, what it looks like a month from now, 2 months from now, and like you're saying, even a year or two from now, I think we could see a very different experience as they button things up. I mean, especially when you're talking about basically a 48-hour storyline that has to run, and yeah, what does happen when the story doesn't maybe go as planned or things like that. So I think that'll be so interesting to watch, and I'm excited to chat with some folks that are paying guests and see what they think. Because these first I think it's booked full for the first 4 months. I think every single cruise. So those 4 months are definitely those hardcore Star Wars fans, and you're certainly going to have some people that are paying that run sites and stuff that didn't do the media events, but I think you're going to have really the hardcore people there. Because I've always found it interesting too, is that is this, and what are your thoughts? Is this experience just for Star Wars fans, or is it also for someone who has the financial stability to spend $6,000 and just do something that's really, really cool? Would they enjoy it?
I think so. I mean, if you are a serious, themed entertainment fan, then I think it's absolutely something to check out, even if Star Wars is not your particular jam, because I think that's, for me, I mean, that's kind of where I am a Star Wars fan, but I think that's where I really found it to be an impressive experience. As a Star Wars thing, it was fun. As a new entry in the world of themed entertainment, it's incredible. That's where it's incredible to me. Because nothing like this has ever happened.
Yeah.
Nobody has done like, oh yeah, like basically we built a small theme park and you're going to sleep in it for 2 days. Like no one's done that. And that part is where I think it's truly incredible. The future is essentially limitless. I mean, yeah, because they can build another one of these somewhere else. They can build them and, theme them to different things. Like that's where I see this being really exciting. Like, maybe Disney doesn't build a new theme park someplace else in the United States, but they could put one of these hotels anywhere.
Yeah. No, that's a great point.
Like, comparatively, it's got to be so cheap compared to building a theme park.
For sure.
And that's where I think there's some real potential. And because it's a new sort of themed entertainment experience, if that is what you love, I think it's absolutely worth checking out, even if you're not a huge fan of Star Wars particularly.
Do you see elements in here that you think could potentially end up in Galaxy's Edge? I mean, I know there's, one of the other things going around is that a lot of stuff on this ship, like storylines or, a fight between Kylo and Rey breaking out, are things we all thought were going to happen in Galaxy's Edge, and they just didn't. Do you think Disney takes note of that and then says, hey, let's put some stuff like this in Galaxy's Edge? Or are they just okay collecting the guest money and they don't have to, and people are going to still keep paying to come?
Time will tell on that. Yeah, I asked somebody in Imagineering and a similar question and got sort of a half an answer. According to them, they told me that this and Galaxy's Edge were being designed in concert basically from the beginning, which honestly is a little frustrating, because if it's true, that means that when they were telling us we were going to see these things in Galaxy's Edge, maybe they thought that some of that stuff was going to go in Galaxy's Edge and it ended up transitioning over to Starcruiser. And I do think that there's elements, because it's a 2-day storyline, there's things you can do in a 2-day storyline that you just can't do in, you're going to spend 3 hours in Galaxy's Edge out of an entire day at Disneyland or Disney World.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it. Part of the reason that some of those things, whether they knew it at the beginning or whether they just decided later that it needed to be in Starcruiser, not in Galaxy's Edge, I think that's part of why that happened. Having said that, I think there's definitely some potential for an expansion of Galaxy's Edge because of not, well, expansion is the wrong word. I don't mean physically, but I think there's some potential for more to happen in Galaxy's Edge because Starcruiser is there now, and I would certainly like to see it, because it can potentially even help Starcruiser. It's like if you're just visiting Disney World and you're in Galaxy's Edge and you interact with characters or have some experience on playing with the data pad or whatever that is connected to the Starcruiser in some way. It's like, but to get the rest of that story, you got to go to Starcruiser.
Yep.
That can still be fun to do on the theme park side,
sure,
while potentially acting as almost, sort of a sideways marketing for Starcruiser.
For sure.
And I'd certainly love to see that.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we will someday. I don't know. I would love to see it as well. But, well, thank you so much for your time and sharing all of this. I'm relieved to hear a lot of your feedback and input. This is, as a huge Disney fan, I want this to succeed. I certainly wish that it could succeed at a lower price point, but I want this to be good. And I'm glad to hear that, looking at it, it is, and everybody's always going to place value in different ways, and they're going to decide whether it's worth, $6,000 or not. We're doing our first Disney cruise in September, and that's a lot of money for us. And so to think that this is basically twice as much is kind of crazy. My only other fear, I guess, with it, like we were talking about before and missing stuff, is it just going to be too chaotic, for someone who you would hope that anybody that's spending that money is going to understand that they're being placed basically in a role-playing position for the entire trip. But I wonder if it's going to be a point, and maybe these are where things do change over time, that it's just almost too much. I would love to be able to spend some time in my room, but not miss storylines. And I know that sometimes they're doing these surprise kind of plot points and twists and turns. So it'd be very interesting to see how it goes, but
yeah, I think the balance there, I think, is probably one of the things that we may see some tweaking even in the short term, just because, they are going to be catering to a wide variety of customers who are expecting a variety of different experiences, and being able to balance that for everybody is, I can tell, is just not going to be that easy. If you go on a cruise, there's lots of things that you can do, but you can also kind of do nothing.
Yeah.
And still feel like you're getting value for your money. My question is, when you pay that kind of money and you don't get deeply involved in the story, are you going, if you just sort of hang out and do the little, attraction elements, or hang out in the bar, or eat all the food that you can stuff in your belly. If you go and you spend that money and you just do that stuff, are you going to come out feeling like you got your money's worth?
Right.
And I think that's, I think for the people who really play, they will feel like they got enough out of it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about those other folks.
Yes.
That's one of my questions.
Yeah. That's another great point. Is there anything else you wanted to add, or any other thoughts you had before we sign off?
I don't think so. That kind of covers it as far as that goes. Hey, read Cinema Blend. I've published a bunch of stuff on the Starcruiser, and there will be more to come. And I also cover all other elements of theme parks there. So,
well, let people know where they can find you on Twitter, what your handle is, and any other things outside of Cinema Blend that you're doing that you want to promote. Go for it.
No, let's see. Well, my Twitter is Child Dirk. It's CHILDE_DIRK. And yeah, I hang out there and talk about theme park stuff. And beyond that, Cinema Blend is my full-time gig, so that's where I do all my theme park stuff, and that, and I'm snarky on Twitter a lot. So
perfect. I love it. Well, thank you so much again for your time, and look forward to talking to you again in the future sometime.
Absolutely. Would love to come back. Thanks so much.
Well, that's it for now. But if you want to learn more about the full Starcruiser adventure over those 2 nights, we will have an upcoming episode of that with some of the first guests to embark on that voyage. Kingdom Strollers provides premium stroller, crib, and ECV rentals delivered straight to your Orlando theme park resort, hotel, or vacation home, and at up to 50% off the price of theme park prices. Head to msmfriends.com to reserve today and check out our additional partners. And if you want to catch all of our upcoming resort, theme park, and at-home live streams, make sure you check out our Patreon group at wonderlandcrew.com. And as long as you're out there online, go ahead and subscribe so you get brand new episodes every Tuesday and Friday. And we would be so thankful if you could leave us a rating and review, because as Rhonda always says, it helps our show grow. That's all we've got. We'll see you real soon.
Jeremy and Rhonda are more than a little fond of Disney World, so they made this podcast to share it all with you. Reports and resorts, top 10 lists of all sorts, Main Street Magic's bringing it home for you.